For thousands of years, glaciers have been gouging away the rocky shores of Alaska. In one place, they have created a vast bay, 100 miles long and 80 miles wide. It's called Prince William Sound, a place of peace and seclusion, where a human being can feel contentedly lost. The icy silence surrounding rafts of dozing harbor seals is accentuated by the calls of kittiwakes and an occasional groan and rumble from the face of the glacier. Otherwise, all is still in Prince William Sound. It was not always such a lonely place. Prince William Sound is the meeting point of all three groups of native Alaskans, Eskimos, Aleuts, and Indians. Once, they fished for salmon in summer and hunted seals and sea otters all the year round. At the end of the 18th century, the peace of 1,000 years was shattered when a Russian fur trader, Alexander Baranov, arrived to exploit the riches of Alaska, or Russian America as it was then known. The sea otter was among these riches. Barely 50 years later, the sea otter was nearly extinct in Prince William Sound, hunted out by the Russians and by the local natives who became their slaves. The hunting came to an end, and now the otter has nearly recovered its former numbers. The sea otter is typical of the animal stories to be found in the Sound. It flourished once the heavy hand of humanity was lifted from its life. Indeed, there are those, fishermen mostly, who say that the process has gone too far and that the otter numbers ought now to be controlled. Prince William Sound lies on the shores of the northwestern Pacific Ocean at the head of the Gulf of Alaska. Its palisade of islands shelters it from all but the very worst storms. Humpback whales have always used the Sound as a summer resort. It's a quiet backwater where food is plentiful and disturbance is at a minimum. Scientists who study Prince William Sound's whales identify them by photographing the underside of their tail flukes. Some of them go to Hawaii for the winter, and they meet some of the very same whales there, 2,500 miles away. Hawaii is the humpback's great breeding ground, but here in the north, food is the attraction. They move about the waters of Alaska at an easy pace, gulping in the krill all summer. Summer is when human visitors come to Prince William Sound, traveling by the only quick and reliable means of transport, the ubiquitous float plane. Alaskan bush pilots know their way around the hundreds of islands in the Sound as if it were their own backyard. The float plane is the principal link between the remaining scattered settlements among the islands. When the sound of the engine has died away, an unearthly peace descends, and with it what might be called a feeling of benign isolation. Most of the islands are uninhabited, the haunt of porcupines, bears, bald eagles, and deer. As the glaciers withdrew at the end of the Ice Age, 10,000 years ago, they left behind them ridges of hard rock, aligned roughly north-south. The animals used these islands as stepping stones to spread right across the Sound. Most of the islands have populations of deer, breeding contentedly among scenes of plenty in the complete absence of predators. Once they were an important natural resource, providing food, skins, and sinews for the natives' use. But most of the natives have left their scattered camps around the islands to move into the towns and the 20th century. so the islands are uninhabited. But there was a time when Prince William Sound nearly became a second Klondike. The gold rush passed it by, but at the turn of the century, 200 miles inland, the Kennecott copper mine was discovered. At that time, it was the richest in the world. The new railway, which was built to carry the copper out, was one of the wonders of Alaska. This was called the $1 Million Bridge. Now, it isn't worth a dime. It was last used in 1938 and finally wrecked on Good Friday 1964 when a violent earthquake wrought havoc in the Sound. The epicenter was here beside the Columbia Glacier. The glacier flows 40 miles from the Chugach Mountains into the Sound. Its front is 4 miles across and every day drops thousands of tons of ice into Columbia Bay. The 20 glaciers which flow into the Sound are the chief architects of its dramatic scenery. Most of them have been retreating since 1983 for some unexplained reason. Each year, the Columbia Glacier alone releases a cubic mile of ice, along with the accumulated debris which it has scoured from its 40-mile course. Close to the site of the Indian village of Chaniga, which was swamped and abandoned in the earthquake, the Chaniga Glacier is less active where it tumbles into Icy Bay. Visiting kayakers can explore in safety where once native hunters pursued otters in their sealskin-covered canoes. The legacy of those hunting days is to be found on the shores of the Sound, in villages like Tatitlek, whose Eskimo name conceals its Russian history. The names in the graveyard under the Russian Orthodox crosses are Russian, though their owners were Native Americans. Selanov, Ivanov, Elishensky are names adopted from the Russian traders. Alaska became a state of the Union in 1959, so the inhabitants of Tatitlek are now American citizens. The pattern of life has changed. From the point of view of the wildlife of the Sound, it has been a mixed blessing. On a quiet morning in May every year, the little harbor of Cordova hums with suppressed tension and powerful boat engines. The killer whales have been reaping the harvest already, but for humans, this is its first day. The salmon season has begun. A motley flotilla of boats sets out, each skipper making for his own favorite location in the Sound. Fishing is the main business in Cordova. The opening of the salmon season is a hectic time for humans and wildlife alike. Fishing is a chancy business. Some skippers believe that the killer whales will lead them to the salmon. Others have been known to shoot at them, accusing them of interfering with the fishery. The fact of the matter is that the whale's echolocation and mobility enables them to feed at will, while humans, for all their modern technology, still need an element of luck to provide them with a catch. One method is seine netting, in which a large net hanging from floats is drawn into a circle in the hope of corralling the fish. Beating the water is supposed to drive more salmon into the net. Five different species of salmon come each year to breed in the 900 spawning rivers which flow into the Sound. They are numbered in tens of millions. You'd think catching them would be easy, but it's not. The Seine circle is 100 yards across, but that's like a teaspoon in the vastness of the Sound. Nevertheless, Alaska's salmon fishery has been erratic. Between the 1940s and the mid-70s, the catch fell by half, partly because of overfishing and partly because of a series of hard winters. In Prince William Sound, fishery biologists are concerned for another reason. The North Slope oil pipeline ends at Valdez, at the head of the sound. The waters of the Silent Sound may become even less productive. There was a time when Atlantic and Pacific salmon were the same. But millions of years ago, a few fish must have wandered round the Arctic and into the Pacific. When the land bridge formed connecting Alaska to Siberia, they were cut off. By the time the bridge was broken again, 1 million years ago, there were 6 different species of Pacific salmon. 5 of them breed in Alaska. All Pacific salmon die as soon as they have spawned. At the mouth of each of the salmon rivers, the dead and dying fish provide food for scavengers and predators alike. The fluctuations in the fishery make fishing a very risky business. A boat may cost $100,000 and a lifetime's permit a further $50,000. In a good year, the money might return all at once, but in a bad year, repayments get in arrears, and try as he might, the fisherman might be forced out of business. Success or failure among the salmon means feast or famine for the fisherman. Because Prince William Sound is relatively compact, with so many rivers so close together, it's an ideal place to study what's happening to the salmon. The question is, why are there good years and bad years? And can the range be predicted? In streams like this, it's fairly easy to monitor the movements of a whole returning generation. The presence of dippers is a sign that the water is clean and the stream undisturbed. The presence of a bear is a sign that it knows what a salmon trap is. The biologists work throughout the 2-month spawning season, trapping and examining the fish which come up to breed. Bears and scientists show a mutual respect. There are many more bears than people out here, but the people have the rifles. There's still a lot to learn about the factors affecting the size of the salmon run in any given year. Until 30 years ago, the only accurate figures from a fishery which has been going for over a century were the numbers of fish killed. To manage the fishery properly, the state has been measuring how many fish arrive each year and what condition they're in. The growth rings on a single scale reveal the fish's age, its state of health, and a great deal about his past life. This far north, a Pacific salmon might spend as long as 3 years in the river where it hatched and 4 years at sea, depending on the species, before returning to the original river to spawn and die. The biologists collect scales from a sample of the salmon which wander into the trap. Pink salmon return after 1 year at sea. The biologists can predict how many should come back, but they're not always right, and they want to know why. The work continues daily throughout the breeding season. There are several of these research stations around the Sound, all working on aspects of the same question. How can this salmon population be harvested without suffering lasting damage? There are 2 state salmon hatcheries, but Alaska law also allows private, non-profit-making hatcheries to be established on certain streams within the Sound by people who are interested in improving the fishery. For pink salmon, it has been a resounding success, offering hope for all the other species. The trap takes a random sample of all the fish coming up the river. To keep the sample natural, sport fishing is banned along the banks. However, bears are not sportsmen. They do it for a living. They are quite natural. Bears featured strongly in the lives of the natives of Prince William Sound. They were hunted for meat and skins, and they were honored as examples of strength and cunning. Their cunning is just as great as it ever was. There are bears on most of the larger islands in the Sound, and the mainland, especially here in the west, teems with them. Every summer they feast on the salmon run, laying up fat for their winter hibernation. A convenient trap is an added bonus. Predation by bears has a negligible effect on the salmon population. Although they often catch fish which are moving upriver to breed, many of the salmon which they catch have already spawned. If the bears are negligible, another threat to the fishery is not. Huge tankers carrying oil from the pipeline pass through the Sound in a steady procession. All the animals depend on clean water and are therefore at risk from the bottom of the food chain to the top. So far, there has not been a major oil spill. But when the Department of the Interior made an impact statement in 1972, it admitted that statistically, a spill is inevitable. The consequences are all too predictable. But meanwhile, there's another danger from this and other heavy traffic. Even killer whales must sleep from time to time. About 300 miles south of the Sound, near the port of Juneau, this one was hit by a large ship, not a tanker, perhaps a ferry or a cruise liner. Scientists collect what information they can from the corpse, but there seems no way of preventing similar accidents in the future. Away from the shipping lanes, life is less risky. Steller's sea lions were named after George Wilhelm Steller, the Danish biologist on the St. Peter, the first ship to explore these waters in 1741. They were roosting, roaring, and scrambling about on the rocks then, just as they do today. Their headquarters is in the Aleutian Islands, 600 miles to the west, but they have breeding colonies all round the North Pacific, from Japan to California. Over a century ago, the great whaling skipper and explorer Charles Scammon predicted that commercial hunting would wipe out sea lions within a very few years. He was almost right. But the sea lions survived in a few remote locations like this, because their population was reduced to such a low level that to wipe out the survivors was not worth the journey. After all, it took 3 or 4 sea lions to produce just 1 barrel of oil. At one time, the natives used sea lion hides to cover their kayaks, saving the soft skin of the throat to make boots. They used the flippers to make the soles. As well as being a natural sanctuary from which the sea lions made their comeback, Prince William Sound is home to colonies of seabirds. Kittiwakes breed all round the Arctic, across the top of Siberia and Canada, and as far south as the British Isles. In northern Norway, they breed on ledges on buildings in the main streets of Tromsø. Here, in complete contrast, they breed in silent seclusion. Well, it's silent during the rest of the year when the birds are far out at sea. kittiwake breeding colony is one of the noisiest places on Earth, as each pair endlessly proclaims ownership of its own particular ledge. Trumpeter swans were once common all across North America, but their migration route took them across too much farmland, and they were nearly shot out. Here, at the mouth of the Copper River, 1,000 birds gather every summer. The black oyster catcher is an oddity. Everywhere else in the world, oyster catchers are black and white, with a few all-black individuals in the population. Here, they're all black, all over. Many of the islands are capped with muskeg, a deep, spongy bog, which delivers endless streams of water throughout the summer. The kittiwake colony is underneath one of these perpetual waterfalls. It's no use to the birds, they drink seawater. But it's a reminder that Prince William Sound is bounded to the east by the Alaskan rainforest. The annual rainfall here is measured in feet, not inches. As soon as the young birds have fledged, the kittiwakes will leave for the open sea, where they spend the winter. Already they are restless, as August brings the first chill of autumn to the Sound. The summers are short this far north, but very sweet. The future of Prince William Sound seems secure, until a tanker comes to grief, as one day it must. Statisticians like to speak of such disasters as occurring only every 50 years, say, or perhaps once a century, but no one can say how soon. The next 100 years started today. Flocks of migrating shorebirds on the rocks are safe for the moment. But will the rocks be covered in oil when they return here next year? And what of other human pressures? The Russian traders have long since gone, and the miners have no further effect on the ecology of the Sound. Fishing is in sight of finding a balance between the salmon and its predators. But somebody shot this sea otter, and not with the intention of feeding a young bald eagle. It was most probably a crab fisherman trying to protect his stock. There is a long way to go, but after its checkered past, Prince William Sound is on the brink of a more hopeful period. Many human endeavors have faded into the silence, leaving the grass to grow over their rusting remains. The future could set an example to other places in Alaska and to other states. In Alaska, more than anywhere else, there is still enough of everything to go round. Coexistence is the key between the various predators which share the riches of the Silent Sound: bears, otters, whales, and human beings.